So I just want to start this off by talking a little bit about why I decided to do this. Full disclosure, not a YouTuber, literally filming this on my laptop and in my dorm room. But for a final project for my class called Social Media for Social Good, you're supposed to pick a campaign or a cause that was important to us and that we could promote on social media. I'm going to get a little bit more into my actual story in a later video, but I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and POTS, and I was diagnosed right before I got to college. So I decided to make these videos because I didn't know anything about them before I got diagnosed. They're pretty rare. So I just kind of want to try to raise awareness for these two conditions, chronic conditions, and tell people that if you feel like something's wrong, then go and pursue it, because it took me a really long time to get diagnosed with both POTS and EDS. But that's kind of just why I decided to do this. But for now, I was just going to kind of give a brief overview about what EDS and POTS actually are. Because some people I've talked to have actually heard of POTS, but very few people have heard of EDS. Full disclosure, I am not an expert. I'm not a doctor. I'm just someone who has these, who is trying to figure it out. And this is very brief. There's a lot of complicated medical things that I will not be covering, mostly because I do not know how to pronounce a lot of them. But just to get the basics, I'm just going to briefly kind of talk about what they actually are. So for EDS, it stands for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and at its most basic definition, it weakens the connective tissue in between ligaments and tendons and bones. So your collagen in between your bones is weak, essentially, and that causes your joints to be loose, your skin to be thin and stretchy, and it bruises easily. And in extreme cases, it can affect blood vessels and organs. I do not have the extreme case. Again, I'll talk about more about my actual experience in a different video. But there are three main types of EDS. There's hypermobile type, which is the one I have, and your joints bend further than normal and are easily dislocated or sprained, and about 1 in 10,000 people have this type. It's the most common out of the three major types, and there's subcategories, but it's the most common, but that's hypermobile. The classic type is when your skin is smooth and stretchy and fragile, and you often have scars on your knees and elbows, and your skin bruises easily. You're also likely to have sprains and dislocations. That's kind of common among all of the types, and many people with classic have flat feet or problems with their heart. About 1 in 20,000 to 40,000 people have this type. And the last main type is the vascular type, which is the most rare and the most life-threatening. This potentially could be life-threatening to some people, or could shorten your lifespan. I do not have the vascular type, so my joints hurt. But for people with the vascular type, it's a little bit more serious. So it weakens your blood vessels and your organs can tear easily, which is why it's dangerous. And about 1 in 250,000 people have this type. So that's the most rare, most dangerous, and could have life effects. That's not to say that the other two types are easier to deal with, or that it's not going to be a daily struggle, because a lot of people with EDS are in wheelchairs, or they're bedbound, or they can't hold down a job because they're in pain a lot and they can't walk, or various other reasons. And it can be debilitating some days. My joints hurt a lot and I don't want to get out of bed, but I do. Some people can't. It also is very mentally taxing knowing that you'll be in pain most days and that it'll be hard to get out of bed and do daily tasks, and you might not be able to go out at night when you want to, or various other things like I can't play the sports that I play anymore. I've gotten so many injuries. And I'm not discounting anyone's experiences, but typically vascular EDS is the most dangerous. So this is a genetic condition. Usually one or both of your parents have it for you to get it. There's no cure for it. Basically, you just have to live with it. Physical therapy is common, just trying to manage the pain. But about 1 in 250,000 to 1 in 5,000 people are currently diagnosed with EDS. This disease is often undiagnosed or misdiagnosed because many doctors don't even know what it is really. There's not a lot of research, not a lot of people have it, and sometimes, in my case, they're just like, yeah, your joints dislocate and you're extra flexible and they move a lot, but nobody ever put the pieces together. So it often goes undiagnosed. So based on that number, there's probably a lot more people in the world living with it than they know. I lived with it for 18 years before I actually got a diagnosis. So that number is pretty rough. So the next chronic illness I have is POTS, and it stands for, I'm probably going to butcher this name, Postio-Orthostatic Tachycardia Syndrome. At its most basic definition, means that my circulation sucks. It affects your blood circulation. Anyone who knows me knows my hands are cold at all times, no matter what. And that's why. Yes, it took me 18 years to figure that out, and everyone I've ever touched hands with mentioning how cold my hands are. That's why I feel dizzy all the time and why I pass out frequently. So, symptoms of it: high or low blood pressure, high or low heart rate or racing heart rate, chest pain, dizziness, lightheadedness, especially when standing up. This usually is when you go from a lying to a sitting to a standing position. People with POTS, their heart rate changes in extreme increments. Most people, if you stand up, your heart rate will go up a little bit, but it still stay normal. But people with POTS, your heart rate goes much faster when you stand up, which causes you to pass out. So it also happens when you're standing for a long time, when you're walking for a long time. So that's one symptom. Also, exhaustion and fatigue is common. Fainting or near fainting happens to me almost weekly. Abdominal pain and bloating, nausea, temperature deregulation, my hands, nervous or jittery feeling, forgetfulness and trouble focusing, blurred vision, headaches and body pain, might feel like flu-like pains, insomnia and frequent awakenings from sleep, chest pain and racing heart rate during sleep, shakiness and tremors, especially when you're on adrenaline, discoloration of feet and hands. I have that one for sure. My feet are always purple, no matter what, especially when I get out of the shower. Exercise intolerance. It's really hard for me to exercise without feeling like I'm going to pass out. That sucks because I am a very active person. Anyone who knows me knows that I play a lot of sports, or did. And I like to work out. I like to be active. So that one's hard. Excessive or lack of sweating, and diarrhea and or constipation. So this is a quote from clinic about POTS. It says that people with POTS cannot coordinate the balancing act of blood vessel squeeze and the heart rate response. This means that the blood pressure cannot be kept steady and stable. So that's when you go from lying to sitting to standing, your blood pressure cannot be kept steady and in the normal range of what your blood pressure and heart rate should be doing those motions. There are also different types of POTS. There's neuropathic, which is leads to poor blood vessel muscles, especially in the legs and the core of your body. And there's also, it's mostly to do with the nerves and just your blood pressure volume, essentially. They all have a little bit of a difference, but I don't want to get too medical. And for the most part, as far as I know, I have not gotten a diagnosis of like POTS type 1. I just have POTS. So to me, from my non-medical perspective, they all seem roughly the same, and basically that your blood vessels and your circulation do not work as they're supposed to. The majority of people with POTS are women between 13 and 50 years old. Some people do grow out of it eventually, some people don't. Some people it just gets less. I'm in that range. I cannot tell you if I will grow out of it or not, because I'm in that range currently. Get back to me when I'm 50. So POTS is fairly common. About 450,000 people in the US have POTS. However, it often also goes undiagnosed or misdiagnosed. I had started passing out in the 3rd grade, and I passed out frequently, but not like scary frequently, like once a year. And there was always some reason. Oh, I was dehydrated. It was the first hot day of summer. It was stress. I was in pain, something. But as I'll talk about later, eventually we were like, no, this is something more. From what I've read so far and people I've heard from, that's common. And it's similar to EDS. That number is probably a lot more, but passing out happens. So you just think, oh, I didn't drink enough today, or I didn't eat enough today. But in fact, it could be actually more than that. So people with Sjögren's disease and celiac disease are at a higher risk. I have, most likely, I never actually got tested, celiac disease. I'm at least gluten-free, probably have celiac disease. So that's makes a lot of sense. After my diagnosis, so many things that have happened in my life make so much more sense. All the sports injuries I've had, me having to be gluten-free, feeling tired all the time, no matter how much I sleep. It's once we started looking up these symptoms and these things that are common, like everything clicked. The reason why my health file is this thick is because of 2 things. That's why everything has happened. Well, probably not everything, but it explains a lot of it. So treatment, there's a couple treatments. There are a few medications. I'm on a medication. It takes a couple months to see if it works or not. So, so far it's been working for me. I don't feel like I'm going to pass out as often, mostly when I just work out, occasionally if I stand up too quickly. So that is an option. Also, eating lots of salt, having a high sodium helps you not pass out, I guess. Drinking lots of water. Normal people usually have to drink like 3 liters of water. My doctor told me to drink 4. Compression socks, they're lovely. They're very fashionable. And exercise. As much as it sucks to exercise actually helps. If you don't exercise, it makes it worse. So if you don't exercise for a long time, you just gotta work through it until you don't feel like you're going to pass out as often, because it actually helps. And getting a lot of sleep also is important, which makes so much sense why I'm so tired all the time, because I need more sleep than the average person. So when POTS, going back to when you stand up and POTS patients, all their blood stays in their lower extremities instead of going to their upper extremities like your brain, which is why we pass out. If you can't get oxygen and blood to your brain, you pass out. So that's why, essentially, all the blood, usually that's why my hands are so cold and my feet are always so hot. But that's kind of a very basic overview of what POTS and EDS are. They are related. People with POTS have a higher risk of having EDS. And there's still a lot of research being done about both of these things. They're related, but they're trying to figure out how exactly they're related. They're trying to do more studies of POTS and EDS patients, so they can just find out more, because it is rare. And again, a lot of people are mis or undiagnosed, so they're trying to find more people to do studies. They're trying to figure out how to diagnose it more effectively, if there are any treatments. So that's super basic. And again, I'm going to go more into my actual diagnosis and story, which is complicated and will probably be a longer video. But if you have any questions, I will try to answer them as best as I can. Again, I'm not a doctor. I am not studying medicine because that is not my thing. I am a political science major. So this is very new to me. I will not become a doctor for these things. So if you have questions, I will try my best to answer them. And I just really want to raise awareness and kind of just be like, hey, these things exist, because not many people, including myself, knew that they existed before I got diagnosed. And there's a lot of resources out there. If you think if some of these things that I've been saying are like, oh my God, I have that, or I feel that, then I would recommend doing research. I also, disclaimer, want to say that there's a wide range of severity and of people with both of these. So don't let stories scare you, because I am proof that you can still do things while having these conditions. It's not a death sentence. But I would still encourage you to do research and reach out to people if you think you might be experiencing some of these things. Again, do your research with that thought in your mind that everyone has a different experience and your experience will not be the same as someone else's experience. And there's people who are in a wheelchair and can't function as a normal person. But there's people like me who are functioning as a normal person, and you would never know I had this unless I told you, essentially. So I would do research and reach out to people cautiously. But I will say, hearing other people's stories validate how I feel, to know that I'm also not alone. Because once you get a diagnosis like this, I did not know anybody who had this. So being able to get your emotions validated, your feelings validated, your pain, that was a big one, pain validated, that did a lot for me. So I'll leave it with, you can do research, but don't be scared, I guess, at what you're finding. It's scary, but don't let it deter you. I don't want this to be a pity project for me. I'm not trying to gain pity or sympathy. I have, like I said, lived with this for 18 years at the most. I don't know when I got it, if I got it, but this is not for you to feel sorry for me. This is not for you to, I'm not fragile. Yes, I'm dealing with this. Mentally, it's hard. Emotionally, it's hard. Physically, it's hard. But I don't want it to seem like I'm asking for anything. I just want to raise awareness about these conditions to hopefully help other people who might need it, or just if I do tell you that I have this and that, you know what, I don't think I can go on a hike today because I'm in a lot of pain, to have people understand as much as they can what I'm going through without actually being in my body. And again, this is just my story. It's not every POTS patient, it's not every EDS patient's story. It's mine, and my story will not be like anyone else's, and anyone else's story is not going to be like mine. Everything I said is about me and not anyone else, unless I explicitly say that it's anyone else, because I can only talk about my experiences. I do not speak for all patients. I can only talk about me, and I think that's it. Yeah, so if you have any questions, let me know. Share this video with your friends. I would really appreciate that. And I guess thanks for watching.